Well, greetings everybody. Welcome to our King's channel. I hope today's a great Sabbath for you, unless of course you're watching this on some other day other than the Sabbath. And you know, sometimes in our walk here, we get to really feeling, pretty bad about certain things, but there's also a lot of mysteries that we don't understand except for when we feel certain ways. And I'd like to explain a little bit about that today. But first, what I'd like to do is get into a scripture that our brother Blue Turtle sent to me for Sabbath. He does this a lot, and I really appreciate it because he sends scriptures usually right in line with what I'm going through or what has been set, for a certain period of time in our walk, and it seems like he's right in tune with these things. And he sent these few verses that I'd like to share with you because they really chimed in, to what is taking place and what I want to bring this video out about. Basically what this video is about is how is it that we can live without sin and yet being in sin, okay? And there is a difference. It's how we live on this earth today because everything is defiled. So if it's defiled and we're out there, even in our own homes, taking letters from the mailbox or whatever, we become unclean, which is sinful, but it's not a sin unto death. It's just one of those unintentional and unavoidable sins. And of course I say this, and there might be some that say, well, I already know these things, I'm not going to listen, and click off the video, and that's fine. You go right ahead and you do so, because there are different degrees of understanding. And I also want to speak about how this is accomplished in the walk of our Heavenly Father, because sometimes, in our walk we get really feeling pretty horrible, and it's almost like words can't describe how bad we can get feeling like when we mess up, even though it's unintentional. But anyway, here in Proverbs 1 verse 5, Blue Turtle wrote, and thank you for it, my brother, and it says, a wise man will hear and increase learning, and a man of understanding will attain wise counsel. To understand a proverb and an enigma, the words of the wise and the riddles, the fear of Yahweh is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. And so I'm sort of glad that I didn't bring a video here last evening when Sabbath first started, but I was feeling really out of it. I have to tell you, if you watched the last video wherein I did sin and I felt horrible, it was because of a lack of diligence on my part. I saw in the ingredients chitin, but I thought chitin was like an herb or something, and it turned out that it was a rendition of shellfish. And therefore, scripture also says, touch not the unclean thing. Well, I touched the unclean thing. Not only did I touch it, but I put it on my feet for over 12 hours. They were on my feet. And after I took a shower that day, prior to bringing the video that I brought on it, the unclean things in there had affected my mind so bad. And part of the reason why we're not supposed to touch those things, of course, those that are out there doing it always, just like an alcoholic, if an alcoholic's out there, he could drink a bottle of whiskey, and to him, he appears normal. Same thing with those that are eating pork and everything else, eating the unclean thing, washing their hair with the unclean thing, scrubbing their body with the unclean thing. Doctors prescribe to them so they can get rid of symptoms from the unclean thing, so they take unclean things to cover the symptoms of the unclean things. But I'll tell you, when I took those pads off, my mind was affected greatly. In fact, when I brought the video, I didn't realize. I was just feeling so uncomfortable. And it wasn't until the next morning that I realized I actually had my t-shirt on backwards. That's how bad it affected my mind, and why I hadn't brought really. And it's really hard to focus on certain things. But at the same time, through that sin, in my detesting it, and when I get feeling really bad about the sins that I'm in, I whoop myself so severely that I can barely stand. And if it wasn't for our King, I'd have fallen. So many times I would have fallen and never got up again. But that's what we have to do. We have to learn to, take what life brings us and do the best with it. And we have to deal with it the best that we can through prayer, because we can't do this on our own. And we need to develop this fear of Yahweh, okay? And that fear is, if you sin, He can destroy you, okay? And it's not that He wants to destroy you, it's that we ask for it our own selves, you know? When we are disobedient, we've turned from Yahweh. He didn't turn from us. He gave us a mediator, Yahshua, our King, so that we have a way between ourselves and the Father. In the book of Job, even, Job was talking. He says, oh, if we only had a mediator between me and you, I'd be sure then you'd hear me. But because there wasn't a mediator at that time, Yahweh heard him, and Yahweh doesn't want to destroy the earth again the way that He did with Noah in the flood. It grieved our Father to do so, but the world had got so messed up. And, you know, as in these days also, our King, He was a human being born just like you and me. He knew absolutely nothing until He started eating butter and honey. And that way He could take on the understanding of what righteousness was and to choose it over evil. That's what butter and honey does. And also the seats, the tassels, the lots and the fringes, they're all the same thing. You should be wearing them on the outside four corners of your garments. These are laws for reasons. And unless you come to that understanding and truly understand it, then we're just like the rest of the world. And of course, understanding comes in different ways. For some of you, maybe just hearing that you shouldn't do something is just well enough for you. And I'm not saying you should go out and sin to experience it. You've already done enough of that. It's time for us to repent and get rid of the sin out of our lives. For me, when I was growing up, I was the type that I'd hear you're not supposed to do something, and I had to find out why, you know? I mean, and some people are like that, you know? It's like, don't stick your tongue to a freezing metal pole, you know, and 99% of the people say, well, that makes sense. I don't think I'll do that. But then there's that other 1%, sort of like those that I fell into. And of course, this is not me there. This is some other fellow that had to find out for himself. But after these things take place, we understand why we shouldn't. And the thought of sticking our tongue on a metal pole again when it's freezing outside doesn't really come to mind. But we've always got the cute stories of how we've done such or whatever. And those that actually go through things like this, even King Solomon, okay? King Solomon had turned, not that he turned from the laws, but he went out and to defy Yahweh, but he had to find out he was to become the wisest man of all time, other than, of course, Yahshua. But in his time and before, there wasn't a wiser man. Satan's wiser than all, of course, that are living on the earth today. Our king is wiser than Satan, but it's not as our king lives on the earth. Only in certain few does our king live in. And, of course, they are those that have taken on the 10 Commandments by keeping the give or take 613 laws. That is the schoolmaster, the comforter, the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of truth. The give or take 613 laws bring you to understanding how to keep those 10 Commandments, and they also bring you to our King, to where our King resides inside of you. Now, I do want to run through some scriptures because some, though they have some understanding, may not have the full picture yet as to why we should not sin. Even though there's examples, like I said, of Solomon who did sin. He sinned in just having, he had 700 wives. He had 300 concubines. And a lot of those wives came from foreign countries and persuaded Solomon to even put up idols, in the holy temple of our Heavenly Father that Solomon had built for him. But then at the end, Solomon did repent, and he came to the conclusion that the whole conclusion of man, the whole reason man is here, is to reverence our Father, to fear our Father and to do what is right so that you can acquire the gift of life. But gifts are only for those who qualify for them. And I hate to use the example of a birthday party, but let's use it because, even though nobody should be keeping birthday parties, they're satanic rituals. But at a birthday party, who gets the gift? Only the one that qualified. And the way they qualified was because whether it was a year before, 30 or 50 or 80 years after that day that he was born or she was born, every day the next year and the next year and the next year after, they consider a birthday and they have friends over and the friends bring who the gift? Well, they bring it to the one that qualifies for that gift. And that's the person that was born on that same day of the year, however many years before. And people bring the gifts to them because they're the birthday boy or the birthday girl. Does that make sense? Well, in the same way, this gift of salvation, this gift of the pardon and acquittal, only comes to those who qualify for it. And the only way you can qualify for it is to turn from your sins and put your trust in our King only. And of course, everyone starts out just like that little babe, just like our King started out in the flesh, being born by a woman knowing absolutely nothing. Just like you knew nothing. Well, when his diaper was wet or, was full of certain things, then he would cry. And mommy and daddy would change the diaper or whatever. And, when he was hungry, he would cry. Mama would feed him and he'd be all right. But then he got to the age where he was eating butter and honey. He didn't come out of the womb, speaking full sentences. Believe you me, he's not what 99.99% of the people on the earth today think of in our Messiah. For some reason, they think he came out, he was speaking full sentences, full of wisdom, and thus he never sinned, But that's the farthest from the truth. He was born just like you and me, so that we would have hope and know that because he was born like you and me, but he chose to do what's right. And even though he was born to a household that was actually keeping the laws and commandments, they went off into Egypt because Herod was killing all the male children after our king was born. I'm sure you know the story about that. If not, look it up. There's plenty of people out there that can bring it out, even though they're not 100% correct on the things they bring. They bring it anyway, and you can reap the knowledge from some of those things that people say, but let's not pile teachers onto us to where we're going this way one day and then we hear a video and we're going that way, and so on and so forth. But prove all things and stay 100% with what the scriptures tell us to do. And our king, his parents took him off to Egypt. Now in Egypt, there were books. Even when Moshe was there, Pharaoh had the books brought to him because Moshe saying, hey, we got to go out and worship Father Yahweh. And Pharaoh's like, well, who in the world is this Yahweh? Well, they couldn't find him in the book of the gods because Yahweh's not a god. But for certain that after Moshe left out and Pharaoh's armies went out after him, got drowned in the sea and everything, Yahweh's name ended up in books. And when Yahshua went to Egypt, Yahshua saw that name, understood that name. And later on in Yachanan, or John chapter 17, Yahshua revealed our Father's holy name to his disciples. The priests, the Pharisees, all made them Sadducees. And even the disciples, they were calling on the Canaanite gods that the children went a-whoring after when they left the wilderness. Moshe fell asleep. Moshe was told before the children went to the wilderness that they were going to go to the land of the strangers, into that promised land with flowing milk and honey, and that the children would go a-whoring after the gods of the land. And that was the gods of the Phoenicians and the Canaanites. The Canaanites and Phoenicians had the same gods in their pantheons. The supreme deity was El and Elyon, Elohim, Adonai, Adonis, which were translated into English as God. And the Greeks didn't have capital letters in their alphabet, so when they wrote God, it was all small lowercase letters. When it was translated in the English, when they wanted this God of the Canaanites to act as though it was our loving creator, all they did was put a big letter G on the small letter O-D, or all capital G-O-D. And that's supposed to be Father Yahweh. Well, the children went whoring after those gods. And Father Yahweh says he's not a god, and he's going to destroy those gods. And of course, the chiefest deity of the Canaanite and Phoenician pantheon, God, El, Elohim, Eloyah, Elohim, Adonai, Adonis, Andor, etc., allegedly had a son whose name was Baal or Baal. Now, from the time the children went into the wilderness, and then later went into the land they were promised to inherit and went a-whoring after their gods, well, it was a long time after that when Jeremiah or Jeremiah came on the scene. And in chapter 23, verse 26 and 27, Jeremiah explains how the children, from the time they left the wilderness up until his day, they forgot the name of our Heavenly Father. And the very last word in verse 27 of Jeremiah chapter 23 is Baal or Baal. Said the children forgot our Father's holy name for Baal. And when you look up Baal, it's Lord. So anyone calling on Lord or God today, you know 100% that they're not of the 144,000, nor do they have understanding of our loving Creator, and thus they have no understanding of sin. Because if they had the full understanding of sin, which usually comes from these things, and our King said, who loves me the most? Those I forgive for the most. Okay? And believe you me, I was a chief of sinners. And unblessedly, even today, there's no way to avoid unintentional sin. But our King's not speaking of unintentional sin when he says to sin no more. Some of these things you just cannot avoid, you know. There's no way to avoid unintentional sin sometimes. And sometimes you feel like really bad, you know, when you do sin, even unintentionally. So let's run through some of these things, if you don't mind. I hope that you can come to this understanding. Here in Leviticus 5:17, it says, if a person sins and commits any of these things which are forbidden to be done by the commandments of the Father, though he does not know it, yet he is guilty. He or she is guilty and shall bear their iniquity. You know, just like when I put those foot pads on, I'm bearing the iniquity because it's hit me up here in my brain. It's made me dizzy and groggy and, I have to say, a little bit blind to some things. And it's a scary thing, you know, when you're bearing this iniquity, when you're bearing the guilt of what you've done, even though it was totally unintentional, and I could have avoided it had I only researched those words, instead of thinking, oh, well, that's probably just an herb or whatever, just like all the other ingredients in here. Who'd ever thought they was going to put shellfish in a foot pad to pull out toxins from your body, from your holy temple? You know, it never clicked until afterward. And I knew something was wrong when I had woke up with those pads on my feet. It's like something just did not feel right. And I knew I was in trouble for something, but I just didn't know what until I researched those ingredients, and I'm like, oh my word, I can't believe I done this. But anyway, it's one thing to do these things, these sins, bearing your guilt, bearing your iniquity, and it says, and he shall bring to the priest a ram without blemish from the flock with your valuation as a trespass offering. So the priest shall make atonement for him regarding his ignorance. See, this is different than knowing that you're doing wrong and doing it anyway. There is a penalty for such things as that. There's also the penalty for the ignorant sins. You don't get off the hook, you know, free and clear. But there's this difference, and the priest would make atonement for him regarding his ignorance in which he erred and did not know it, and it shall be forgiven him. Now, you know, a lot of people out there as well believe that these sin offerings have been done away with, but that's just not so. Our King is in heaven, taking care of these ignorant sins for us through sacrifices. And believe it or don't, these sacrifices will take place forever. If you got the Blue Letter Bible edition here on the internet, just type up here in the top, sin offering. Hit the button, this is the King James Version, and go to Ezekiel. You can see here in Ezekiel, if you take a look from like Ezekiel 39 on through to the end of the chapter, you'll see where it's speaking of when our King returns, and there's the 1,000-year millennial reign, and after that millennial reign. And just look for where it shows sin offering in here, and it'll prove the thoughts of so many Christians and so many of those out there in the different worldly religions that think that our King came and did away with all sin. But he didn't, okay? You have to do away with the sin in your life. And sin is going to take place probably forever, but it's not going to be known sins. It's going to be unintentional sins. And there is this sin offering here as it shows. It says the vestibule of the gateway, this is Ezekiel 40:39. In the vestibule of the gateway were 2 tables on this side and 2 tables on that side, on which to slay the burnt offering, the sin offering, and the trespass offering. Ezekiel 42:13 speaks of the sin offering. 43:19, the sin offering. Get down to chapter 44 of Ezekiel 27, his sin offering. Chapter 45, the sin offering. Chapter 46, the sin offering, But here in Hebrews 10 verse 8, it says, previously saying, sacrifice and offering, burnt offerings, and offerings for sin, you did not desire nor had pleasure in them, which are offered according to the law. Yes, our Father does not want sacrifice. He wants obedience. And when you have obedience, there's no reason for sacrifices for sin, except for the unintentional sins that, a lot of people really feel bad about doing. It's almost like eating how you feel. But anyway, as you can see, sin offering is going to take place forever. And it's going to be unintentional. It's sort of like the fellow that changes tires for a living, patches tires and stuff for automobiles. Every time he touches a tire, he becomes unclean. And a lot of people don't see that. They don't understand it. It probably never came to your mind even. It may have. But when you're driving down the road, somebody else, weeks ago or whatever, ran across a rabbit or a chipmunk, a rat, a raccoon or something, and over the week it got splattered right across that road. And when you drive through it, the vehicle goes through that carcass, and unless those tires are washed first and then the sun sets, anyone who touches the tire becomes unclean, so the poor guy in the tire shop. And how I understood this is because I did that job for a while after I come to the knowledge of the truth. And I felt so horrible every time I changed a tire. And I ended up having to quit because it got on my conscience so bad, And I was doing it because I love people enough to make sure they can get from place to place. Some would lose their job, if they was late. So I fixed them extra quick, got them on their way. But all the day long, and even while I was eating lunch or something, I would put on gloves, but the gloves were unclean too because I put them on my unclean hands, and there was no way to avoid it, so I felt horrible all the time about it, and I ended up quitting that profession, because I just couldn't stand it. I became to understand the sin of it, where I'd be willing to claim that like 90% of the people out there don't even think about those things. But of course, there have been men that have changed tires in places like Texas and other areas where there's poisonous snakes, and the fang may have caused the leak, So they're in there and they're wiping the tire down or whatever, and they got stuck, and some have actually died or gotten really sick from being punctured by the fangs and such. Then you can understand your consequences, like others can understand their consequences from doing so. But those things come from experience, from actually sticking your hands to do it. Now here again in Numbers 15, starting verse 23, it says, all that Yahweh has commanded you by the hand of Moshe, from the day the Father gave commandment and onward, how long? Throughout your generations. And he's not talking just to Moshe there, but he was talking to your grandparents, your parents, to you, to your children that you're supposed to be teaching these laws and commandments to, but you most likely weren't taught these things growing up. That's why our king said it was going to be like in the days of Noah, so Numbers 15:24. Then it will be, if it is unintentionally committed without the knowledge of the congregation, that the whole congregation shall offer one young bull as a burnt offering. And hopefully this here Scott Swan, who's been writing me, might be reading this and come to understand. His last comment to me was, Al-Yahnai Hawkins, pray for yourself, foolish old man. So I was telling him that he shouldn't sin, that he should turn from his sins. But him and this here, the deity said, she's one that likes taking the scriptures, and anywhere it talks about Father Yahweh, she'll take Father out and put Mother in there because she's a goddess worshiper and has the religion of the goddess, trying to say that our king, our Messiah, Yahshua, was a woman, that you gotta worship the woman deities, and it's like, I've been trying to talk sense to them, but they just cannot see, and that's how so many are out there. They're just not able to see at this time. But with Scott Swan there, keeps trying to say that Messiah is a woman because where it talks about the price of one to be consecrated to the Father for a female was 30 shekels of silver. And I tried to explain to this individual, it's like, look, if Judas was consecrating our Messiah to the priests, well, Judas would have had to bring the 30 shekels to the priest. The priests are not to pay the person that's being consecrated 30 shekels for a female. It's the other way around. Now, if you could show me where Judas brought 30 shekels to the priest to consecrate our king, I'll say, okay, I'll go along with that. But, Scott Swan wants to go ahead and think that our king was a female because 30 shekels was given to Judas, as well as, these sacrifices for sins. It's a female lamb that's to be brought for the sin offering. And I tried to show the individual, it's like, look, yes, it was a female lamb in some instances, but there's many other instances for sin offerings that it was not a female anything, but they were bulls and goats, rams that were brought forth, just like it shows here in Numbers 15:24. But they cannot understand these things, and some of these people will never understand until it really becomes apparent what the choices they make are actually bringing forth in their life. Sometimes it's a wake-up call to those who've got to take that knowledge to a further step, just like this fella here, okay? Just like my own self have been in the past as well. But here it says in Numbers 15:24, then it will be, if it is unintentionally committed without the knowledge of the congregation, that the whole congregation shall offer one young bull as a burnt offering. That is not a female lamb there, that in some instances a certain sin might be calling for a young female lamb, which doesn't mean that it's our king. These bulls are not Yahshua or Yeshua or Yehoshua. These bulls are not the Jesus either, okay? These bulls are animals that were out in the field that were brought forth as a burnt offering, and it's just not proper to say that these animals that were sacrificed are our king, It's ridiculous, actually. But anyway, you shall offer one young bull as a burnt offering, as a sweet aroma to Father Yahweh, with its grain offering, its drink offering, according to the ordinance, as a kid of the goats, as a sin offering. Now, it's a sin offering even though it was committed without the knowledge of it being sin. So the priests, here in verse 25, so the priest shall make atonement for the whole congregation of the children of Israel, and it shall be forgiven them. For it was unintentional. They shall bring their offering, an offering made by fire to the Father, and their sin offering before Yahweh for their unintended sin. It shall be forgiven the whole congregation of the children of Israel and the stranger who dwells among them, because all people did it unintentionally. And if a person sins unintentionally, then he shall bring a female goat in its first year as a sin offering. So see, there you go now. Is our king a female goat? No, so many want to say that he is the lamb, and he is a lamb, the true lamb that laid his life down for sin, but it did not do away with Passover, and it certainly didn't do away with Pentecost or the Feast of Tabernacles. So furthering in verse 28, it says, so the priest shall make atonement for the person who sins unintentionally. When he sins unintentionally before the Father, to make atonement for him, and it shall be forgiven him. You shall have one law for him who sins unintentionally, for him who is native born among the children of Israel, and for the stranger who dwells among them. It's all the same law. Because somebody doesn't understand, we're not going to change the law so that they're, not liable for what they do, That's not what this is for. The law is for everybody. And when everybody learns to keep the laws, we have peace. So these are all unintentional sins that we've seen in these last verses, even in Ezekiel. So let's go to 1 Yachanan, or 1 John chapter 3, and let's show you as a reminder what sin actually is. Here in 1 Yachanan 3:4 says, whoever commits sin also commits lawlessness. Lawlessness is not keeping the laws, okay? You're lawless when you don't keep the laws. And, like it says, and sin is this lawlessness, okay? And you know that he was manifested, talking of our Messiah, he was brought forth, the cover was taken off him, so that those who don't sin no more on purpose can know our King. He was manifested. You know that he, Yahshua, was manifested to take away our sins, and in him there is no more sin. And in him there is no sin. And you know that he was manifested, revealed, to take away our sins. Yes, there's forgiveness in our King, as long as you're not out there knowing you're doing wrong. If I would have known that in those foot pads was the shellfish, and I put them on anyway, well, there would have been no forgiveness for me. It was ignorant, and I still feel like so many of this world wouldn't even have an understanding of how I feel, because I done it. Even though it was unintentional, I feel like, things that really have no words, that at least should be spoken in, company of women and children and such. But anyway, it says here in verse 6, whoever abides in him does not sin. And then it says, whoever sins has neither seen him nor known him. And so many people out there are confused on saying, well, it says everybody sins and therefore nobody knows him. And no, that's not what it's saying. It's talking of intentional sin. Those that are out there intentionally sinning, they don't feel like those who gave up sin, got rid of the stuff out of their life that just shouldn't be there. But everybody sins. It's unintentional sin, though. Hopefully that's what it is. Otherwise, our King knows if you were intentionally stepping in it, and if you are intentionally stepping in it, then there's not going to be forgiveness for you. But those who step in it unintentionally, they can get washed, and it's not just going to the garden hose, and washing it off your feet or whatever. But it's actually asking our King to forgive you, and then you try your best not to ever be unintentional in it again and never do it again, okay? And it says here, 1 Yachanan 3:7, little children, let no one deceive you. He who practices righteousness, and righteousness is what? That's right, Deuteronomy 6 verse 25. It shall be righteousness to you and me too if we keep his commandments. Our king said, if you want life, keep the commandments. Little children, let no one deceive you. He who practices righteousness is righteous. Yes, you can be righteous from never sinning willfully again. You become righteous just as he, our King and our Heavenly Father too, are righteous. And it shows in verse 8, it says, he who sins, he who knowingly steps right in things that he shouldn't be stepping in, putting his hands to things that he shouldn't put his hands to do, or even his thoughts, our king said. If you think in your heart to have a relation with some woman out there, well, you've already committed adultery in your heart. So you can think intentional sins. But if the thought comes in your mind, say, no, I don't want to think that. Get out of me, and rebuke yourself because you were falling short. There's forgiveness for these things. So anyway, verse 8, he who sins is of the devil, for the devil has sinned from the beginning. For this purpose the Son of Yahweh was manifested, that he might destroy the works of the devil. And then it shows whoever has been born of Yahweh does not sin. In this becoming born of Yahweh, you have to go through the schoolmaster, the give or take 613 laws. You have to have in your mind and in your heart, and the only way they can get there is through practice, through falling down, sometimes by other ways, but you come to the understanding where you no longer want to be in those situations. You no longer want to commit sin, sleeping with the neighbor's daughter or wife or dog or whatever. But whoever has been born of Yahweh does not sin. They don't sin intentionally anymore, for his seed remains in him and he cannot sin. No, if you know that our Father is going to destroy you if you sin, and you go off and you get walking in it just because you want to walk in it as a joke or to impress others, or just because you've got that disobedient spirit inside of you ruling in you, well, you haven't been born of Father Yahweh. You haven't been born again. And it shows in verse 10, in this the children of Yahweh and the children of the devil are manifest. He who does not practice righteousness is not of Yahweh, nor is he who does not love his brother. And I've gone round and round with those who don't love their brother. They don't love their enemy either. And the command is that we love them both, We are to pray for those who spitefully use us. We're to pray for our enemies. And if we instead preach and speak against them behind their back, because even Paul, poor Paul, man, he's dead. So those who speak evil of Paul are speaking behind his back, and they hate him. They condemn him in their own minds. They do not love his brother. And therefore, as it says here in verse 10 of Yachanan, 1 Yachanan 3 verse 10, they're the children of the devil. And we don't want to be the children of the devil. We want to be repentive. Here Daniel speaks. He says, yes, all Israel has transgressed your law. All Israel has transgressed your law and has departed so as not to obey your voice. See, there's the difference, okay? They turned from her father knowing they were turning from the Father to go off to this goddess worship, the Queen of Heaven, or whatever else it is. But all Israel has transgressed your law and has departed so as not to obey your voice. Therefore, the curse and the oath written in the law of Moshe, the servant of Yahweh, have been poured out on us because we have sinned against him. And of course, Daniel prays that these sins will be forgiven for those that turn away, and speaks of a remnant throughout the scriptures, this remnant, the 144,000 that in the last days would do so, and they would be used to help bring this whole world out of this known and intentional sin. You can look around you, you see it everywhere. Television, on the commercials, on the radio. you see it walking down the street or driving down the road. You can see these sins taking place or on billboards and everything else, advertising to come into the sin. And even Romans 3:23 says, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of the Father. Absolutely. We all step into it, though we don't want to step into it. Sometimes we just do. You go to a grocery store, you pick up a can off the shelf or a bag or whatever it is. And the person that touched that can before you, that may have put it on the shelf, maybe he or she was having sex in the back room. This takes place, okay? And then they didn't take a shower or nothing. So they're out there putting these things on the shelf, and yes, they're contained now in a shell of uncleanness that they're putting on there. Then when you bring them into your house, you wash them off, and at sunset they become clean again. But unintentionally, you're not picking up that can because you want to take on the sins of their fornication or anything else. You're picking up that can because you want to eat lunch or for supper or for whatever reason. Put it in storage. That was your intent, but then you find out, or you don't find out even, that you have unintentionally sinned. All sin. Because this world's full of people that are sinning and they're spreading that sin everywhere. That's why our Father is going to destroy the whole earth and the heavens and everything and rebuild them new again once those that don't want to step in it and enjoy it won't have it just jumping on them from all these other people. Of course, uncleanness still will take place, and uncleanness is a sin. Unintentional, of course. I mean, there's going to be children that are out there playing in the field, sticking their hands down in a hole. Well, what if they bring up a dead rat or something? They become unclean. They touched the unclean thing. It says, touch not the unclean thing, and I'll receive you. And there the child is, or even an adult or whatever, touching that unclean thing. It may have died on its own, or, may have been half eaten or something, but yet it's still unintentional sin. And that's why these offerings for unintentional sin will take place forever. And then again, you got the sin where, maybe there was a pig died on your land and you got to go bury it. Well, you're going to touch it to put it in the hole. You're going to become unclean. And though it may look as though it was an intentional sin on your part to push the pig off into the hole so that no one else will come and get unclean by it, that's not the intentional kind of sin it's speaking of. Sometimes a man's got to get up there and get rid of certain things that may cause him to become unclean. And though it was intentional, it's not like he went out of his way to go find a pig, come and shoot it on his property or whatever, and then hug it or what. That's not what it's speaking of. It's speaking of those that want to do that sort of thing, or go to the store and buy pork and eat it. Well, that is intentional sin. But if you ordered something from the store, like a chuck roast, nice beef chuck roast, and they substituted and, gave you a pork butt or something in there, and you pull it out and it's like, well, that wasn't intentional on your part. Though you intentionally pulled it out of the bag, you thought it was a beef chuck roast, So we need to not be judging each other over these things and realize this sin is going to come. Sin's going to be with us forever. Even though we're born of our Heavenly Father, Yahweh, there are unintentional sins that are going to come upon us. Father Yahweh doesn't want even unintentional sins on his own self, and that's why he has no relationship with us personally in these last days, or since the flood of Noah, really. There's only been certain individuals that our Father had a personal relationship with. That's why he is a mediator, our King Yahshua, to mediate between us snotty-nosed, dirty-diapered little brats. Yahshua is cleaning us up to where we're going to get to the age, to the grade in this school that we're in, that we will no longer be emptying our bowels in our own britches. And if we start blowing nose bubbles, we know enough to grab a Kleenex, to wipe it up, And thus the day is coming where our King will turn us back over to our Heavenly Father, where our Father can have this personal relationship with us, and we could all be a joyous family. That's the ultimate goal of this. Like in Romans it said, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of the Father. We all sin unintentionally. We step in it, I'm telling you. But then it says, being justified freely by his pardon and acquittal, through the redemption that is in Yahshua our King, whom Yahweh set forth as a propitiation by our King's blood through faith, to demonstrate his keeping of the law, his righteousness. Because of his forbearance, Yahweh had passed over the sins that were previously committed. Yes, when you come into the true faith, that's when your old sins are done away with. But they're not all just boom, all done away with. The moment you come to understand that through Yahshua or Yeshua or Yehoshua, even if you think at the time that you're in this grade that you might be in, maybe preschool or kindergarten, calling on the name of the Jesus, if you come to the understanding that you're not supposed to be eating certain things or whatever, and you stop from that one sin, well, you still got to worry about them other, give or take, 200, 300, 400 laws that you may be breaking. But when you do get through the schoolmaster, through the practice, where these laws and the commandments are written in your inward parts, in every fiber of your DNA, that's when our King's blood will wash away all our previous sins. When you become born again, because you were born once into that sinful flesh, now through baptism and everything, you have now turned your life over to a sinless life that is unintentional sin, to where you never want to sin again. And that's when our King's blood, through that new covenant, the blood is on the new covenant, the renewed covenant. And when you pass into that renewed covenant by keeping the give or take 613 laws that teach you how to keep those 10 commandments, then our King's blood covers you. And if you sin again, here in Hebrews 10:26 explains it. It says, for if we sin willfully, knowingly and intentionally, if we sin knowing we are sinning again, after we have received the knowledge of the truth. Now, what is truth? Truth is the every living word. If you go against any of the every living words, then you are a liar and there's no place for you. You will not acquire the kingdom. For if you sin willfully after you have received the knowledge that you shouldn't, there no longer remains a sacrifice for sins. In other words, you're not going to get into that new covenant. And if you was there and are so secure that you're going to sin again anyway, then the covenant made no benefit for you at all, except for when you was in it. Because now the door to that blood is going to be taken from you, and our King's not going to have himself nailed to a tree again to forgive you for what you went back to doing. And it says in verse 27, so please pay attention to verse 26, for if we sin willfully after we have received the knowledge of the truth, there no longer remains a sacrifice for sin, but a certain fiery expectation of judgment and fiery indignation which will devour the adversaries. Get this, anyone who has rejected Moshe's law, and that's what's fearful about me bringing these videos. Because, there are those that hear these videos and say, oh, that's a bunch of, stuff. We ain't got to keep them old laws, boy. That's just a bunch of stuff. That Jesus died and did it all for us and everything else. But I understand verse 28, what it's saying. And when I explain these things to people and they reject it, it says, anyone who has rejected Moshe's laws dies without mercy on the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. And when I bring this forth in videos, the Holy Malachim seen this. Our King led me to do it, so there's a lot more than 2 or 3 witnesses to these things, and I feel horrible, bringing them out. I feel a little satisfied sometimes, and someone says, wow, I didn't see that or something, and then they start keeping the laws even better, getting closer to fulfilling the law, which we all have to do. So many people say, oh, the law was fulfilled, you don't have to keep it. But why would someone say that unless they're totally ignorant or rebellious against the truth? Please understand what it says here in Galatians 6:2. It says, bear one another's burdens, and so what? And so fulfill the law of Messiah. For if anyone thinks himself to be something when he is nothing, he deceives himself. But let each one examine his own work. Yes, it says to do works. You got the whole Christian nations out there saying, don't do works, because then you won't get Zeus's 3 naked dancing daughters to do a lap dance for you. You won't get this grace if you do works. Well, Father Abraham worked. Our king said, if you want to be like Father Abraham, do the works of Father Abraham. You claim to be his children, do his works. It says here in Galatians 6:4, but let each one examine his own work, and then he will have rejoicing in himself alone and not in another, for each one shall bear his own load. Now, I don't always agree with Galatians 6:4 because I do rejoice in the works of my other brothers and sisters out there that may have been sinning and then come to the realization that they were, and then they turn from it. I find great joy in that. But please understand, when they speak in Matthew 5:17, where our king said, don't even think that I came to do away with the law or the prophets. I didn't come to abolish them, but I came to establish them. I came to fulfill them. And even after our Messiah's death and resurrection, you've got the disciples teaching, like in Galatians 6:2, bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law. I mean, common sense is if the law was already fulfilled and done away with, then you can't fulfill it, can you? How can you if it's done away with? If all the fish are gone out of the ocean, how are you going to catch a fish? Bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law. And so again, here in Hebrews 10:28, anyone who has rejected Moshe's law dies without mercy on the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. Of how much worse punishment do you suppose will he be thought worthy who has trampled the Son of Yahweh underfoot, counted the blood of the covenant by which he was sanctified a common thing, and insulted the spirit of pardon and acquittal? Not Zeus's 3 naked dancing daughters, but of pardon and acquittal. For we know him who said, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says Yahshua. Father Yahweh said it too, but now Yahshua has all authority and overall prophecy and everything our king's going to be bringing forth, and vengeance is Yahshua's. Vengeance is mine, I will repay, says Yahshua. And again, the Messiah will judge his people, and he's going to judge his people through the schoolmaster. As you learn to keep those 613 laws, you'll be judging yourself so you can keep the 10 commandments. But then the time's coming when the 144,000 are gathered. All nations will flow unto it. And why? To learn our Father's ways, to put on our Father's thoughts so that our Father's thoughts become their thoughts, and to learn the laws and commandments so they can acquire salvation. And of course, when people do turn from keeping what they understand they should keep, like it says here in Hebrews 10:31, it is a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living Father. And to show that there's no instant salvation, it shows here in Hebrews 10:32. But recall the former days in which, after you were illuminated, you endured a great struggle with sufferings, partly while you were made a spectacle both by reproaches and tribulations, and partly while you became companions of those who were so treated. For you had compassion on me in my chains, and joyfully accepted the plundering. So let's keep those things in mind. I'm going to cut that off here at this time. Please, if you don't understand it, what was just brought, listen to it again. There's unintentional sins. And then there are those sins where you know what you stepped right into, and yet, you gobble it up anyway. And you shouldn't do these things. I wish y'all was here to enjoy these cookies with me. I just put my pasta maker to use here before Sabbath. And I made some wonderful peanut butter chocolate chip cookies that there's a special little lady, I'm telling you, that when we are gathered, we're going to have us some chocolate chip cookies and a milk conference. And all the little ones out there, and we may even have different types of cookies, but we're going to have us a conference when we're gathered, and maybe even go fishing afterwards. So with that, I do love y'all. I hope the Sabbath is a delight, or whatever day you're watching this. I hope that it's a delight. I hope you're being tested. I hope you're being tried. I hope that you are overcoming and succeeding in the learning to fear our Heavenly Father. Even fear Yahshua. Trust in Yahshua only. Yahshua, Yehoshua. Get away from the Jesus, okay? That's one thing that we need to do, is get away from the Jesus, and that is one of the major steps to get on the righteous path to the kingdom. Please read Revelation chapter 22. Read verses 14 and 15. These things were written after our King laid his life down and took them back up again. So if you're out there thinking it's okay to sin, please read Revelation 22, 14 and 15. They were written after our King laid his life down and his blood covered the new covenant that he wants every one of us to enter in to. And with that, I love y'all, man. And ladies. Bye.